Before you speak a single word in any room, a judgment has already been made about you. The powerful have always understood this, and they have never left that judgment to chance. Most people believe that substance overrides appearance, that the quality of what they say, what they know, and what they can do will eventually correct whatever impression their appearance initially created. Those who understand human nature know that this belief, however comforting, it feels to those who prefer to invest in substance over presentation, consistently underestimates the speed and durability of the judgment that appearance creates before substance has the opportunity to present itself. The human mind is an extraordinarily rapid assessor of social signals. In the first moments of any encounter, before a word has been spoken, before any competence has been demonstrated, before any character has been revealed, a complete set of conclusions has been drawn about status, authority, reliability, and the specific weight that this person's subsequent contributions should be assigned. These conclusions are not random. They are drawn from the most immediately available information, and the most immediately available information is always appearance. What most people don't realize is that these initial conclusions do not simply constitute a starting point that subsequent interaction corrects. They constitute a filter through which all subsequent information is processed. The person who is initially assessed as authoritative will have their competence noticed and remembered. The person who is initially assessed as unserious will have the same competence observed and discounted, attributed to luck, to specific circumstance, or to the exception that the initial assessment anticipated would occasionally occur. This is not a flaw in human cognition. It is an efficiency, a rapid categorization system that allows complex social environments to be navigated without the processing cost of evaluating every available piece of information equally. But it is an efficiency that the strategically aware person understands and accounts for, rather than the one that operates on them invisibly, while they wonder why their competence is not receiving the recognition they believe it deserves. Pay attention to what this reveals about the psychology of first impressions and their resistance to revision. The initial assessment, once formed, becomes the lens through which everything subsequent is interpreted. Confirming information is weighted heavily. Disconfirming information is processed skeptically, attributed to factors that preserve the existing assessment rather than revise it. The person who made a poor initial impression through careless appearance management will find that their subsequent performance, however excellent, faces a specific and rarely acknowledged headwind: the cognitive resistance of an audience that was prematurely convinced of a different conclusion. This is where the understanding of appearance as the first language of power reveals its most practically significant implication. Managing appearance is not about vanity. It is about controlling the filter through which everything else you do will subsequently be evaluated. It is about ensuring that the rapid assessment that occurs before you have said anything creates conditions under which your substance will be received, rather than discounted. Few people understand that this is not a superficial concern. It is among the most fundamental strategic concerns available because it shapes the baseline from which every interaction begins. This connects directly to the clothing as institutional signal, which operates at a level of sophistication that most people never consciously read, but that influences social behavior with remarkable consistency. What a person wears communicates not simply their social status, but their relationship to the environment they inhabit. The person who dresses with deliberate intentionality communicates something about their relationship to every system they participate in, that they have considered the signals their appearance sends, that they understand the implicit codes of the environment, and that they have chosen to operate within those codes with awareness rather than in violation of them through ignorance or indifference. Most people believe that dress codes and appearance standards are arbitrary social conventions that the confident person should feel free to disregard in favor of personal expression. Those who understand human nature know that arbitrary conventions and power signals are not the same thing, and that the ability to distinguish between them is itself a form of social intelligence that appearance management, practiced deliberately, develops. This is where the discipline signal reveals its most quietly powerful dimension, because the maintenance of personal appearance is not a single act performed before an important occasion. It is a continuous private practice that extends across every context, every day, and every level of formality or informality that a person's life inhabits. And continuous private practices reveal something that public performances never can: character, the specific quality of self-governance that a person brings to the management of everything in their life when no specific audience is requiring it of them. The powerful understand that appearance management is one of the clearest available signals of this quality, because it requires the same discipline in private, when no one of consequence is watching, that it requires in public, when every detail of the impression being created is understood to matter. The person who maintains intentional appearance in private settings, in casual settings, in every setting regardless of its apparent strategic importance, that person communicates something through the pattern of their behavior that no single impressive public presentation could establish with equivalent credibility. That the discipline is not a performance. It is a genuine operating principle. And genuine operating principles, visible across sufficient observation, are the foundation from which the most durable forms of reputational authority are built. There is a phenomenon that operates in every human interaction, in every meeting, negotiation, presentation, and casual encounter that most people experience without ever consciously identifying it. It shapes the credibility assigned to opinions before they are expressed, the deference produced in others before any demonstration of competence has warranted it, and the baseline authority that some people carry into every room they enter, while others must continuously work to establish what the former never had to earn through performance. It is the authority calibration effect, and it operates almost entirely on visual information. What most people don't realize is that the authority others assign to a person is not primarily a conclusion they reach through deliberate evaluation of that person's demonstrated competence. It is an automatic response to a set of signals that the human mind processes below the level of conscious decision, making signals that were calibrated through a lifetime of social experience to associate specific visual presentations with specific levels of status, capability, and reliable self-possession. The person whose appearance communicates authority activates this automatic response before a word is spoken. Their opinions are weighted more heavily in conversations where the balance of available information is genuinely ambiguous. Their positions are challenged with greater hesitation even when the challenger possesses superior knowledge. Their presence in any environment shifts the social dynamics of that environment toward their gravitational center, not through any active assertion of dominance, but through the accumulated effect of an authority signal that is continuously being processed by everyone in the room. Pay attention to what this means for the strategic person who understands how the authority calibration effect operates, because understanding it reveals both why appearance management matters and precisely what kind of appearance management produces the specific authority signal that is strategically most valuable. It is not the most expensive appearance. It is not the most fashionable one. It is not the most elaborate or most visually impressive presentation available within any given environment. It is the most intentional one, the specific quality of a presentation that communicates, through its consistency, its care, and its evident awareness of the impression it creates, that the person inhabiting it has considered the signals they send and chosen them deliberately, that they are not operating unconsciously within the environment, but managing their relationship to it with the same awareness they bring to every other dimension of their strategic positioning. This is where the consistency of self-presentation reveals its connection to the authority signal, and it is a connection that most people never consciously make because they tend to think about appearance management as a practice reserved for high-stakes occasions rather than as a continuous operating principle that builds its most significant effects through accumulation rather than through any single impressive instance. Most people dress intentionally for important meetings and casually for everything else, operating from the implicit assumption that the impression management effort should be proportional to the apparent stakes of the specific occasion. Those who understand human nature know that this assumption creates a specific reputational vulnerability, because the impression of a person is formed not only in the high-stakes moments they prepared for, but in the accumulation of every encounter across every context that anyone who interacts with them has ever observed. The person who is consistently well-presented builds a reputation whose authority signal extends beyond any specific occasion into the ambient background of how they are perceived across all occasions. The person who is impressively presented sometimes and carelessly presented at other times builds a reputation whose authority signal is contextually limited, visible when the performance is happening, and absent when it is not. Few people understand that the most important impression management does not occur during the moments you identified as most important. It occurs in the moments you didn't think anyone was paying close enough attention to notice, because those are the moments that communicate whether the discipline is genuine or performed. This is where the negotiation advantage of presence reveals its most immediately practical strategic dimension. In any interaction where something is being decided, where positions are being established, where influence is being distributed among the parties present, the person whose appearance communicates authority begins from a position of default advantage that their actual performance in the interaction must either sustain or surrender. The default advantage is not small. It shapes the way questions are directed, the way disagreements are managed, the specific weight that each party's contributions receive in the implicit calculus through which group conclusions are reached, and it is established before the interaction begins, in the moments of initial visual assessment that occur as people enter spaces and take in what the appearance of those already present communicates about the social landscape they are entering. Most people miss this dynamic because they are focused on the content of the interaction rather than on its social architecture. The hidden reason the social architecture consistently matters as much as the content is that humans are social animals whose processing of content is never fully separable from their assessment of the source through which the content arrives. Pay attention to what this implies for every interaction in which you will participate, because it implies something that most people find uncomfortable and practically significant simultaneously. The quality of what you say will always be filtered through the authority signal that your appearance established before you said it. This is where the internal effect of external discipline reveals the dimension of appearance management that is most consistently undervalued and most transformative when it is genuinely understood. The deliberate management of appearance does not simply affect how others perceive the person who practices it. It affects the person themselves, not through the psychological mechanism of performed confidence producing genuine confidence, which is true but incomplete, through the more fundamental mechanism of a person who manages their external presentation, deliberately becoming, through that practice, someone who manages themselves deliberately. The discipline required to maintain intentional appearance consistently, across comfortable and uncomfortable circumstances, across observed and unobserved moments, across the full range of contexts that a life inhabits, is the same discipline that every other domain of genuine strategic development requires. And the practice of it in the visible, concrete domain of appearance creates the habits of self-governance that transfer, with remarkable consistency, to the invisible domains of emotional regulation, behavioral consistency, and strategic patience, where the most consequential forms of self-management operate. Most people miss this principle because they separate appearance from character, treating the management of external presentation as a superficial concern disconnected from the development of the inner qualities that genuine leadership and genuine influence require. The wisest leaders recognize that they are not separate at all. The person who cannot manage the discipline of their own external presentation consistently is rarely the person who manages the discipline of their own emotional responses under pressure, their own behavioral consistency across contexts, or their own strategic patience in situations that demand immediate action. The management of appearance is not vanity, it is practice. There is a dimension of appearance management that most people never consciously consider, one that operates not in the individual interaction but across the full span of every encounter that anyone in a person's environment has ever had with them, accumulating into something that no single impressive performance could construct and no single careless moment could destroy, but that the pattern of behavior across time consistently either builds or undermines. Reputational signal. What most people don't realize is that reputation is not formed through the impressions people intend to create. It is formed through the impressions that accumulate from every observation, intended and unintended, prepared and unprepared, high stakes and apparently inconsequential. And the specific dimension of reputation that appearance management builds or fails to build is among the most foundational, the reputation for self-mastery, that communicates something about how a person manages every other domain of their life. The person whose appearance is consistently intentional across every context builds this reputational signal through accumulation, through the simple compounding effect of every observer concluding across every encounter in every setting that this is someone whose relationship to self-management is genuine rather than performed, that the discipline visible in the external presentation reflects a discipline that extends into the invisible dimensions of their decision-making, their emotional regulation, and their strategic behavior. Few people understand that this reputational signal, once established, functions as a force multiplier for everything else they do, creating a baseline of credibility and authority that their actual performance operates from, rather than toward. The greatest mistake is to treat appearance management as the domain of those who lack substance, as the refuge of people who have nothing else to offer. Those who understand human nature know that the most substantive people in any environment are almost always the ones who understand appearance's strategic function and manage it accordingly. This is where the strategic communication of seriousness reveals its most quietly consequential effect. Because in any environment populated primarily by people who have not considered the impression their appearance creates, the person who clearly has considered it communicates something that immediately distinguishes them from the majority. Not simply that they care about how they look, but that they understand that how they look communicates something, that they are aware of the signals their environment reads, and deliberate about the signals they send. This awareness is itself a signal. It tells everyone in the environment something about the quality of attention this person brings to the management of everything around them. Most people move through the world unaware of the signals their appearance sends. The person who is aware and who manages those signals deliberately has already demonstrated, before saying a word, that their relationship to the world around them is strategic rather than reactive. And in any environment where strategic awareness is scarce, its visible presence commands a quality of attention that no amount of subsequent performance could establish as efficiently. There is a thread that runs through every principle examined in this video. Through appearance as the first language of power, the psychology of first impressions and their resistance to revision, clothing as institutional signal, the discipline signal that appearance management communicates about the management of everything else, the authority calibration effect that shapes how contributions are weighted before they are made, the consistency of self-presentation that builds reputational signal across accumulated observation, the negotiation advantage of presence, the internal effect of external discipline on the actual quality of self-governance, the reputational function of sustained appearance, and the strategic communication of seriousness in environments where strategic awareness is scarce, and it is not a thread about aesthetics. It is a thread about the relationship between self-management and power. Most people believe that appearance is the surface, that what lies beneath it, the substance, the competence, the character, is what actually determines how a person moves through the world and what they are ultimately able to accomplish within it. Those who understand human nature know that this belief, while not wrong about what ultimately matters, is profoundly wrong about the sequence through which what ultimately matters gets the opportunity to demonstrate itself. The surface is not separate from the substance. It is the substance's first communication, the signal that determines whether the substance will be received with the attention it deserves or discounted before it has had the opportunity to make its case. True influence begins not with the impressive performance, but with the conditions that determine how the impressive performance will be received. And those conditions are established before the performance begins, in the moments of initial visual assessment that precede every meaningful interaction in a person's life. Few people understand that the most consequential strategic investment available in any environment is often the most visible and the most consistently neglected. The deliberate, continuous, and private discipline of managing what the first language of any interaction communicates about who you are and how seriously the environment should receive what you bring to it. Power rarely announces itself loudly, but it is always visible in the specific quality of intentionality that certain people bring to every dimension of how they present themselves to the world, including the dimensions that most people never thought to consider strategic at all. The greatest mistake is to believe that appearance is what shallow people manage and substance is what serious people develop. The strongest position, always, in every environment, belongs to the person who understands that appearance and substance are not alternatives. They are allies, and the person who manages both with equal deliberateness and equal discipline has already claimed an advantage that most of their competition never realized was available. Begin with what you can control completely before you speak. Before you demonstrate anything about who you are through the quality of what you say or do, begin with what they see, because what they see determines how they hear everything that follows.